Coming to paperback and e-readers this April, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door must take on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess in paperback and e-readers this April. I was in the laundromat last Saturday when a report came on Eyewitness News. And in this report, it talked about how there was an uptick in violence against Asian Americans and how the Reverend Al Sharpton wanted to go out here and host a rally that Saturday in Harlem for Asian Americans. And when I heard that report, I had to shake my head because here was another black activist going out here trying to form a coalition with another minority group in an effort to try to help them when they have never gone out of their way to help us black Americans. Now, I find it interesting that your Reverend Al Sharpton wants to go out here and host a rally to protest against the violence against Asian Americans, but he won't host a rally to protest the violence that Asian Americans have perpetrated on black Americans. And this violence that has been perpetrated on black Americans inside of establishments has been posted in numerous viral videos. I mean, in many of these Asian-owned beauty supply stores, Asian-owned nail salons, and Asian-owned hair weave stores, we have seen Asian store owners go out of their way to assault black women inside of these establishments, yet we did not see Al Sharpton hosting rallies to talk about stopping the violence being perpetrated on these black women inside of these establishments. No, we saw nothing but silence from your Al Sharpton and the civil rights crowd as related to these black people who were assaulted in these establishments, but he gets vocal about these Asian Americans who wind up going out here and are victims of violence. Now, I'm not saying that violence is right in any of these situations, but I find it quite hypocritical that your Al Sharpton wants to go out here and march and protest for the Asian Americans who are the victims of violence by whites and non-blacks, but when the Asian Americans go out here and assault black Americans in stores, he's all but silent. And again, it just shows how he's more about building coalitions with different ethnic groups instead of trying to go out here and fight for black civil rights. So when I looked at that, I saw him more as an opportunist in that situation, and I didn't see him as being genuine, because whenever you have one of these civil rights leaders talking about coalitions, these coalitions oftentimes are never to black people's benefit, because they will go out here and form said coalition, and then the other people of the other minority group, they will get the benefits, and black America will be left behind once more. Now, I also find it interesting that they're talking about having all these people fighting for Asian Americans and the uptick in violence against them, but the whole thing is, a critical question I have to ask is, why are black people like Al Sharpton getting involved in this situation? I thought Asian Americans had their own businesses and they had their own politicians. They really don't need Al Sharpton going out here and speaking for them, especially when they have the economic power they have received from getting 97% of black dollars and being able to build that into a political power base to the point where they could go out here and get your Joe Biden to go out here and sign an executive order to be able to guarantee them protections under the law that black people have not been able to receive all throughout this year. Because even though there was a pandemic going on, there was still a lot of things that happened to black people where we did not receive any justice. I mean, we can look at the cases of people who lost their lives, like Ahmaud Arbery, people like George Floyd, people like Daniel Prude, people like Breonna Taylor. I mean, where are people advocating for those black people to get justice in this situation? Not where people have gone out here, protested, and rallied, and we have not seen one tangible executive order. And in the cases of people like your Daniel Prude and the guy in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Jacob Blake, there weren't even any charges filed in their cases of respected alleged police brutality. So when you look at things, again, I'm looking at Al Sharpton and I'm saying, why are you going over here talking about coalition when none of these people ever wanted to form a coalition with us? Why are you out here holding rallies in Harlem for other people when those people have never hosted one rally to say, hey, we need to have store owners stop perpetrating violence on black Americans, and we need to have a campaign to provide better customer service towards black Americans? Why aren't people asking these critical questions as related to this uptick in violence against Asian Americans? Now, I know that it is bad that we've had this uptick, but I find the numbers and statistics as related to this uptick to be quite suspect. And the reason why I find it to be quite suspect is because we didn't hear about this all throughout the pandemic. I mean, early on we heard about this whole rash of acts of violence early on during the pandemic, but in the peak of the pandemic and in the aftermath when the economy was opening, we never heard a single thing about any of these incidents at all. But now we're hearing about these incidents a year later, and when I hear about these incidents, the statistics really don't add up, because they said here in New York, in that same Eyewitness News report, 26 people were attacked in the so-called attacks against Asian Americans, but that's a small number that pales in comparison when you compare it to the number of lynchings that took place in the 19 teens, where there were practically 1,000 reported lynchings each year. And that's just the reported lynchings of black Americans. There were probably far many more lynchings of black Americans that were never reported in the deep south of Jim Crow America. So they're sitting there telling me, oh, we had 26 incidents in New York City, and this is one of the world's biggest cities in the country. And the numbers there, they're just not adding up. But you have people, again, who can go out here and take care of their own business, but Al Sharpton thinks he has to go out here and advocate for other groups and other groups of people. And that's where I just have to look at him and go, why are you forming coalitions with other people when black people could not get any sort of justice in numerous cases, and it looks like there might possibly be an upcoming swerve in some other future cases? So people are looking, I look at this whole case and it doesn't really add up. And the whole idea of you have another civil rights leader talking about coalitions with people who are part of other groups and have their own political machine, they can go out here and fight their own battles. They don't need us to fight their battles. And what we need to do is stand aside and let these people stand on their own, because they never stood with black America during numerous crises, and so in some cases when they go out here and did harm to us, they didn't really care about what happened to us. So we need to start letting these groups stand up on their own, because they could stand on their own when they were taking 97% of black dollars out of black communities. They were standing on their own when they were going and building businesses in our community and not hiring us to work in their businesses. Then they can stand on their own and go get policies when they have gone out here and got policies. So if they don't need us here, we need to leave these other groups alone, because when you go out here and talk about forming coalitions, it just makes you look weak politically. And what Al Sharpton did by having that rally in Harlem was make the black race look weak politically, because if you have to go out here and piggyback on somebody else's cause, it shows how weak you are as a leader. And again, you don't fight other people's causes, let them fight their own, and you let them go out here and hold their own, because they were holding their own without us before, and they can go out here and hold their own in the future. They clearly said that they don't need us, but they need our dollars, so we don't need to fight for other people's causes. And that's one of the things, again, that made me shake my head as I saw that report, and I was watching Mr. Superboy's whole report, and that's what made me really question a lot of what was going on here, because here we have people talking about this uptick in violence against Asian Americans during Black History Month, but they're not talking about all of the violence that has been perpetrated on Black Americans throughout the year and continues to be perpetrated on Black Americans throughout the year. And it seems like nobody wants to continue talking about it, because Black people are now talking about tangibles, we're talking about Black agenda, and we're talking about going in a different direction. So it's looking like the mainstream media is trying to create a new narrative as related to this violence in an effort to deflect from Black people talking about the numerous issues we're talking about as related to tangibles such as reparations, and talking about getting genuine police reform in federal policy. So they don't want us talking about those issues, so they try to talk about how there are other groups. And then you have people like Al Sharpton talking about coalitions and how we're all in this together, when people were never with us from day one. And many of these same people who were beating up Black people in these Asian-owned stores, they weren't out here trying to get change when Black people were getting beat up in Asian-owned stores. But the minute the white supremacist comes in, starts beating up on Asian Americans, now you want to call about coalition. Well, there is no coalition in any way, shape, or form as related to economics. And if Black people can't get any support from other people, then we don't have any dog in the race, and we don't have any skin in the game. So we shouldn't be talking about here helping out other people when they're not helping us. And they've helped themselves to 97% of Black dollars, and they were out here talking about how they wanted to go out here and get their own. So let them go out here and get their own. Now, this video will not be monetized, so if you could donate to the Patreon or the Cash App, it would be greatly appreciated. And if you would also go out here and pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, it would also be greatly appreciated. And so that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Coming to paperback and e-readers in 2021, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks on a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business in 2021 at online booksellers everywhere.